first, Trent, if we've decided because of culture, because of personality, because of my audience analysis, when I've paid attention to how you make decisions and how you communicate, for whatever reason, I've decided this conversation needs to be direct, or this conversation needs to be more indirect. How do I go about organizing my ideas so that I've got the right? I mean, I get it. That, I mean, you've established that essentially it's like start with the recommendation up front and then the rationale. But are there, beyond that, are there tips you would give us to help us organize our train of thought so that when we've made that choice, I want to be direct, I want to be indirect, I think it's best for my audience? What does that look like, practically speaking?
That's a really great question. It's one where audiences or where speakers and communicators, they often really get astray. And that is not using an organization pattern. A lot of times we think, well, I need for all my knowledge to come out and all my wisdom and all my experience and everything, and I've only got 5 minutes to present.
That's right.
And that's a disaster.
Or as Samir just asked, or I have no time to prep, but I got to get it all organized and all concise. How do I do that when I get no prep time? Yeah.
Completely. And we, as Samir has pointed out, we are in a world that does not really allow for prep. And my argument to speakers are an outline system, an organizational system that really captures how we are reacting to a problem, to a pitch need, or really an organizational demand. How we react to that using either direct or indirect is key. And for direct, I'm going to always tend to recommend a Mentos recommendation sequence. It's going to have a what to it, a why, a how. We might start it with a situation, complication, question, answer to set up briefly, very briefly, what we're talking about. But I'm going to stick to that core what, why, how to explain really indirect to direct audiences what I'm talking about. For an indirect audience, I might use a Monroe sequence, which has not always been associated with indirect audiences. But really, if you look at it, it gets your attention around a problem, sets the scene up for that problem, and then starts to get into solution, how the organization might buy in. And you can flex that around to really reach more indirect cultures or audiences based on what they want. You could even use a Monroe's motivated sequence to start a conversation at a organizational level about, hey, look, what do we want to do on this problem? Here are some ideas. How do we refine those ideas or make a decision here? And so the key is that you have that pattern. The biggest thing I hear, Brenda, from employers and folks that are out there making these key decisions, I call them deciders, is that they want to hear the idea. They want to know that there's something coming related to that idea if it's an indirect approach, so that they can make a decision about it. They have a lot of headaches in a day that they're trying to get to and manage, and they can't get to this one if they can't get to the point of whatever you're talking about.
I think one of the reasons getting to that direct pattern, or as you called it, Mentos, Mintos, you can all do some research on Mentos. That's a whole cottage industry of bar Mento that has put that together. But I think it's a struggle for people to get there because it's counterintuitive to the way we go about reaching a decision. When we're decision making, we go out and we identify the problem and we do all this research and we gather all the data. And then after we've gathered all the data, we analyze all that data, and then we reach a decision or to a point that we can make a recommendation. And then when you talk about the direct approach, it just flips all of that on its head, because you're saying start with the recommendation, then tell me a little bit about the analysis, why you decided that was a good recommendation, spatter in enough of the data that you went out and collected that you support it, and then tell me how to do it. So the what, why, how is just, and instead we want a chronology, we want to use a chronological approach where I say, well, first we did this, and then we did that, and then we did this. And a lot of direct thinkers and decision makers don't really care about my process of discovery. They just want to know, what's the recommendation? Why is that a good recommendation? Why is that what I should do? How are we going to do it? Yeah, I love that.
And many times those deciders, they sort of know the what of what you're going to be offering. Here's They're going to walk in here with this solution, but they may not have thought about the whys fully. They may not have also got to a decision point, and you might be the nudge that brings them along. I always say deciders didn't get into the chair they're in by not knowing a lot of answers to things or anticipating what people walking in are going to say to them. So leaning into that, let's get to the point with those direct audiences and really say, hey, look, this is what we're offering today. And I'm going to tell you a little more why about that and some more hows, how we get that done.
So some of you had written to us in the comments a specific influential event that you have coming up. If you look at that audience and you decide, you know what, I think I need to use a direct approach with this particular audience, culturally, personality-wise, the way I've noticed their own communication attempts, because people try to influence us the way they want to be influenced themselves or the way they would be influenced. So I've paid attention enough. I know them enough. I'm going to use a direct approach. Think about what that would look like. What would your what be? What would your why be? And what would your how be? So Trent, we didn't tell them what all those bookshelves are behind you. So they are comic books. Trent is an avid comic book collector and reader. So Trent, using Mentos, using what, why, how, can you convince me, a non-comic book reader, look, no comic books on the shelves, you use what, why, how right now to convince me to read comic books. And that way they can see what, why, how in action. Go.
We need sources of inspiration, creativity, and literature that drive people's imagination. Comic books do that. Comic books are a growing industry. Comic books are huge. And when people read comic books, literary skills grow, creativity flies off the wall, and they get huge collections. And so here's how you get started. You get you a long box, Brenda, and you do that the next 3 months. And over a year, you're going to get up to about one of those shelves. And then the risk of that is you're going to be out a little bit of money. But look, the growth that you're going to have is going to offset that risk.
I love it. Brilliant. I love it. Okay, now if we wanted to use an indirect approach, if Trent knows me and he thinks, boy, Brenda is kind of an indirect speaker, I think I want to use this Monroe's motivated sequence. Again, you can all Google it for some follow-up. But Trent, tell us what the components are of Monroe's, and then maybe demonstrate convincing me to read a comic book if you decided to use a more indirect approach.
All right, so Monroe's is going to have an attention step where you bring the audience's attention in, a need, talking about the problem that's being addressed, satisfaction, which is your solution. Here's what we're offering, visualization, which lets us dream about that solution, and then action step. Here's how we get started. And so
Trent, one of the ways I learned to remember those parts, attention was, hey, you, need was, you've got an itch, satisfaction was, which I can scratch. Call to action, or what you say, satisfaction. What's your fourth?
Visualization.
And then you're going to feel so good if you'll take this action. So that's it. That was, hey, you've got an itch, which I can scratch. Then you'll feel really good if you do this. That's how I learned Monroe's.
You nailed it.
Okay, so convince me to get into comic books using Monroe's motivated sequence. I just totally put him on the spot, by the way, with this. We hadn't talked about it, but to his point, this is the beauty of having these sort of turnkey organizational patterns that even when someone just calls you out on the fly to make some sort of recommendation, you've got it. And think about how quickly and concisely he made that clear argument in a direct pattern for me to become, and it was really well audience tailored too. He knew creativity speaks to me. He knows that's a high value or priority for me. He knew inspiration was important to me. So man, we just saw a great demonstration, Trent, of audience analysis and the direct approach. Let's hear indirect.
Do you think that you have been working too hard? Do you think that all your free time is a little bit boring at times? Are you tired of flipping through more and more streaming shows that you feel like are sucking you into the TV? And do you want a hobby that will draw you in and allow you to retain some value with the things that you add to your shelves of life? I want to talk to you today about why the comic book industry, and comic books specifically may be that thing that you're looking for. Comic books satisfy that creative need that you have, and comic books amass value when collected and allowed for a lot of time, lots of time. And when you read comic books, you're able to go on adventures around the world. It's not just superheroes anymore. There's mysteries, detectives, romance comics, you name it. And so as you go around that world, you can get started today. You can visit your local comic book store. You can order them online. You can even read them online and never have them physically. It's whatever device you need. Comic books reach you at that point.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. I feel like, Shelby, we should get a sponsor, and it should be a comic book publisher after this great episode on live. No, that's funny.